Bob thought that the reading he read was old-fashioned. That's from, I think, 1980. Here now, Psalm 78. This is really old-fashioned. Hear my teaching, my people. Turn your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of Yahweh, strength and wondrous deeds. For Yahweh established a covenant in Jacob and appointed a teaching in Israel and commanded to our fathers that they should make it known to their children, that the generation to come might know, even the children who should be born, who should arise and tell their children, that they might set their hopes in God and not forget God's deeds, but keep God's commandments, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not make their hearts loyal, whose spirit was not steadfast with God. So, happy Father's Day. It's always in recorded history been true that generation upon generation upon generation has had to deal with oppression and struggle and getting free from your father. Because Dad didn't do it right, but you will, right? Mark Twain said, when I was 18, I thought my father knew nothing. 10 years later, I was surprised how much he had learned. The ancient words of the psalmist are words of pain, uttered millennia ago about a people in a conflict long since dead and buried, right? Except Middle East, where the conflict there is ongoing and erupts, and it's a people, and it's a history that won't die because it is fueled by generations and generations. The psalmist speaks of the covenants and the prophecies handed down from the fathers to the generations. So just reflect on the time scale of these writings. They're old, they're irrelevant, they're dusty, they're politically incorrect, but in context, they're not. The father, children of oppression lasting generations, of migrations, enslavement, rivalries for territory, power struggles. First Yahweh's on one side, then another. First Yahweh is saving the people, then Yahweh's wiping them out without a trace. Well, we know now that Yahweh was imaged and imagined from many kinds of lenses, and the ones who wrote it down were the ones that endured. But the psalmist writes this story to be passed on from father to son, and yes, from mother to daughter, but we know mothers and daughters pass them along differently in the cultus, in the household ritual. So look again. Look what happens when you pass down knowledge in relationships. We are reading texts thousands of years old. Who's going to read my blog in thousands of years? Who's going to read it next month? Who's going to read this week from Trinity in a couple of years? No matter how carefully we archive it somewhere. But the through line, I searched, what's the relationship between Father's Day and Juneteenth? It's this. Through the centuries, through the millennia, the fathers and sons, the mothers and the daughters, if they're in right relationship with one another, can keep a history alive in a good way. If the relationship isn't right, if it's oppressive, if it's tribal, if it's one dominating another, then it's wrong. Simple as that. And in our modern history, the only way to justice that I can see is our constant struggle and our constant effort toward right relationships. That starts right here at church. You wonder, what can I do about the ongoing generational struggle in this country for right relationships among people of color and white people? Start right here in relationships. That's where it usually begins. Start now. When families are stretched, when fathers and mothers' roles are changing, start with relationships. Look to your wider family. Heal that now. Don't ignore the people right here in the room with you. That's the best I have to offer. This is my next to the last Sunday here. I want to leave it all on the field. This is what I've got. Next Sunday will be all ceremonies, and it will be the blessing of inviting new members into this community of faith. They will be your neighbors. I'm going to tell you a language story. I'm a Yankee. And the terms I heard at home, what was that? Devil, get out of here. Terms I heard at home was, don't bother your brother. Don't bother your sister. That's what I heard. That's the language I knew. At school in Texas, I heard, don't hinder your neighbor. Don't hinder your neighbor. I had no idea what they meant. So when I come across in biblical texts, love your neighbor as yourself, it took me a long time to realize, who's your neighbor? Quick quiz, in the room, who's your neighbor? Point. Yeah. All right. So those people in this room are your neighbor. You're hot. I'm going to give you clipboards to fan with. No, they're not to fan with. Here's what I want you to do. Find out what has drawn your neighbor to this community of faith. It's going to take 3 or 4 minutes. You get a chance to move around if you want. I'm done talking. I've said everything I need to say. What I want you to do is say, just write, here's my name, here's my contact information. Kathleen Davis and Marielle are building you a membership directory. That was the one thing that the transition team said loud and clear. You're lonely, you're isolated, you want to know who to call. This is your chance. Somebody who cares about this building and its finances, the Ministry of Goods and Gardens. Who's that? Who's a trustee? Who wants to carry this around and find others interested in that? All you have to do is sign. You're not signing for a committee or a team or anything. Anybody? Anybody? Trustee, leadership. Nikki, who's going to share with us. All right. Ministry of the Liturgy. That's everybody that does stuff in this room to make worship happen. Might be in the community hall soon. Haley is going to go find people who care about that. Could be the choir. Ministry of Equity and Action. That's justice. Who was called here because they care about justice? Anybody. Leonore cares about justice. Find others who care about justice. You're not signing up for anything. You're just saying, I'm here because I care about this. This was my passion. Ministry of Prayer and Care. Ministry of Prayer. Who's here because they believe this is a community of faith that believes in prayer? Who's that? Take it around and find others that will simply put their name and their contact information. When they make the directory, all they'll do is they'll say, interested in this thing. Outreach and connection, welcoming. Who is interested in welcoming people to this place? All right, Mirror. First of all, give these people a hand because they're brave. Take a few minutes, gather as many names as we have, and then that's it, I'll wrap up. Y'all need something else to fan yourself with. What do you say we order those fans? While they're gathering names, think about worshiping in the community hall. Think about finding creative solutions to get, we could all move to Aspen. That's a thought. Think about starting church at 9 in the morning and having Sunday school after. Think about creative solutions to this issue. It's an issue. Think about, hi, are you new? Are you new?
No.
I have face blindness. I don't know who anybody is. It's good to see you. I'm chatting people up while you do. Find people who are interested in the same things you are. Just put your name down. You're not signing up for a committee. You're just saying, this ministry interests me. About 2 more minutes, and the clipboards will be available during the congregational meeting, which is right after. So you'll have more chances. Unjin, do you have 2 or 3 minutes of music to play, lively music? You're a good sport, thank you. Oh, 2 minutes, just lively. No? Don't worry about it. That's perfect. Thank you, dear. This is how you build relationships. You ask people uncomfortable questions. In the Quantum Church, if you put something in the chat, we'll record that, and we will get your preferences noted. Thank you, Quantum Church.